Hey Internet, it's Gunter with MiniMishaps Games, and today we are going to give Fists and Minds stats to the Mandalorian. The Mandalorian is a difficult choice for giving stats within Fists and Minds because at its core, Fists and Minds is a high fantasy role-playing game, and the Mandalorian is a futuristic world with lasers and firearms, and but from a strictly how the character is used standpoint, we're going to try to create a fan build of the Mandalorian if they were represented with statistics for the Fists and Minds system. So, my first thought for the Mandalorian was a bullseye arm class, a sharpshooter, if you will, and the two stats that it comes with are impact and skill. So the skill is pretty obvious in the Mandalorian because you have the navigating with the piloting the ship is skill, and you have the accuracy with the firearms and the different weapons, the grappling hook. All of those things take skill. Being able to do combat while you're holding, Baby Yoda in one arm. Grogu. Those are all skill things. The impact here was a little bit harder because in the fantasy side, impact is simply your strength and your ability to deal damage. It's your muscles. But in sci-fi, impact is firepower. It's how powerful your weapons and armor and firearms are. And in that universe, the Mandalorian's armor and weapons are essentially unparalleled, with the possible exception of lightsabers. That the ability to deal damage is high. So we started there, and just like our other builds often don't end there, but we started with giving a double shot of impact and a double shot of skill, and that gave us a dwarven bullseye arm. So this image from the AI really made me realize that the use of impact for technology and firearms was beyond the scope of the fantasy setting itself, and so that was what caused me to eliminate the first concept way of creating the character, which is to start with what the fans see in the imagery and things for that character. So our second method of creating characters is to choose 4 different stats and then look at the 6 possible combinations of peoples and classes that give us those 4 stats. And so the 4 stats that I went with are divinity, and that is the whole wanting to get to Mandalore and taking your directions from the folks that are constantly saying, it is the way, this is the way, all those kinds of things. I put that under divinity because it is a source that grants power, but it's not a magic in itself like the Force would be. So Grogu or the Jedi that use Force magic, I would call that a magic trait. And so we don't have magic here. But divinity, because of the whole Mandalore and the gaining powers from the almost religious following of the, don't take your helmet off and all that stuff. I put that under divinity. Then we have strategy, and this is a key concept through nearly every Star Wars protagonist, which is setting up the bad guys to fail and outthinking them when it comes to time to escape, time to take over, time to fill in the blank. strategy is all over in the Star Wars universe, and the Mandalorian is no different. Quick on his feet when it comes to what tools should I use, what technology should I use, hide in the asteroid, those different kinds of things. I also should mention at this point that only one episode of the most recent season is out in The Mandalorian, and so character growth could change how we have conceived him on this particular version. And then the third is flexibility, and so essentially this is a skill that in the Star Wars universe you get in a backwards way, which is the ability to dodge comes from the ability of people to not shoot at you well. So but in the storytelling it means that they were able to dodge all these laser blasts for several seasons from hundreds of assailants, and so flexibility here made sense because that's in the Fists and Minds where you get your ability to dodge. And then the last one we already talked about is skill, and that is the piloting and the fine manipulation of tools, and those kinds of things are pretty heavily emphasized. So what are the 6 ways to make these 4 traits happen? The first one is a Cochlean microcontortionist. A Cochlean is a snail person, and a microcontortionist is exactly what it sounds like, which is someone that can fit through small spaces. So this is doubly ironic and interesting and funny within the game because Cochleans are snail people. They have these massive shells that can be used as like their living quarters, and then to be a microcontortionist where they can bend themselves into fitting through small spaces is kind of a funny combination of things. And I don't think of the Mandalorian as being really a pack mule that does gymnastics. It doesn't really come out in that way in my mind's eye. So we'll skip that one for now. Next up, we have a cephaloid oraclergy. Cephaloid is a cuttlefish animalian. It's a cuttlefish person. So not really a mind flayer like from Dungeons and Dragons. So it doesn't have the psychic capabilities and that kind of stuff. Although there is a nod to that in its ability, which is that it can resist psychic damage. The oraclergy is someone that casts defensive or boosting ideas, and this is almost more of like a World of Warcraft idea where the person stands and affects positively the allies around them. I don't really see this as matching with the Mandalorian either, because Star Wars does some exploration of like fields and barriers and things like that, but it's not an overarching theme of the Mandalorian for me. Now this one probably wins the coolest concept by AI art generator. A mind flayer looking guy inside of a rainbow set of bubbles there. Next up, we've got the Helphard Portal Bender. Helphard is your halfling or your hobbit or your 2-scale person that is half as the size of a normal human. Then Portal Bender would be someone kind of similar to the oraclergy, except specifically regarding teleportation and portals and those kinds of things. I don't see this much with the Mandalorian either. They have the ability mirrored communication, and that's going to be more of the, like the hologram technology, the Help Me Obi-Wan, famously. But almost everything that the Mandalorian does communication-wise, if at all possible, is in person. They just show up to trade exchange that information. There's a lot less use of the hologram generators that way. So we're going to skip this one as well. So we've got 3 strikes. Fortunately for us, that we are not out until we get to the end. Next up, we've got our Frogagog Trap Setter. Now this is a contender for the Mandalorian. 1 trap setter, exactly what it sounds like. The Mandalorian sets traps. They have to get out of scenarios and things where they're outnumbered. They have to defuse or get rid of technologies. They have to interact with certain individuals, have to show up at certain places. So that's all very much in the trap setter thing. I mean, especially like the crossover that the Mandalorian did with Boba Fett. That whole thing was very, very trap setter. But my favorite part comes actually from the Frogagog, which has the special ability of the grapple tongue. And this, while the Mandalorian doesn't have, obviously, a biological grapple, they do actively use those grapple wires in battle, in like stabilizing buildings, and like even in the first episode of this new season, when they were trying to take down that alligator turtle, they all of the Mandalorian armored individuals were using this kind of grapple tactic, and so I think that does line up with the Frogagog's tongue. And then the poison skin from the Frogagog, for me, that's like the for the Mandalorian, if you get too close, they have all the little miniature missiles and things that are built into their bracers, and their jetpack all lends themselves to kind of impacting people that get too close. So the Frogagog is a definite contender, and then we will take a look at the next one. Alright, Hinterbleer Escape Artist wins the AI award for most unexpected and creepy and jump scare image of any of the AI generating that I've done. So the Hinterbleer is an underground hellpard. So if you have dark elves or drow for elves, you have Hinterbleer for hellpards or halflings or hobbits. And so this, if you toned down the insanity on Gollum, this would be essentially a hobbit that was living subterraneously. So the ashen skin or pale see-through skin. And in the Fists and Minds, the Hinterbleer here actually gets cold magic. But not really a match for the Mandalorian, even though on the Escape Artists they do have the tight situations ability. But that ability specifically talks about squeezing the physical self, and that's not usually really what the Mandalorian is doing to get out of a tight situation. So here's the cursed AI image, and jump ahead 10-15 seconds if you want to skip over this one. But here is the Hinterbleer Escape Artist, creepy, jumping out of the camera, and I'm not entirely sure how it came to this set of imagery. Last option is our Felid Witch Doctor, so a cat person that is a witch doctor as well. So here again, the Felid lands on its feet, and that might go with the jetpack idea. And same with up a tree, that they can move while they're climbing with the grappling hook. But for the Witch Doctor here, the ability is Bugs and Bark, and that is to transform crawling insects and arachnids to become a mount. And while you have a lot of amazing and creative mounts in Star Wars. The Mandalorian, when he uses mounts, it's a secondary aspect. It's not part of the character's main identity. So that means, since the Witch Doctor here was a point against the Mandalorian match, we are going to go with the Frogagog Trap Setter as my choice for which one matches the Mandalorian the best. And there he is with his cup of what is that soup from that first early episodes of The Mandalorian. But there you have it, the Frogagog Trap Setter. This has been another episode of what if they were in the GetherVerse, the GetherVerse fan build, and we will see you guys in the next video. Thanks, Internet.